my online learners. Staying hydrated. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is that when we're out of routine, we forget some of the simple things. And I don't know if I've been doing a great job of drinking water throughout my day. So just a reminder to you if that's something that you need to be doing again. I know lots of you guys always carry your water bottles around, and just curious if that's happening to you now, if you're hydrating enough. So stay hydrated. We're going to go ahead and get started today. This is our second portion of our strategies lecture. And really, I'm only going to talk to you about two strategies today. And the two strategies that I'm going to talk to you about are some of the easiest strategies, but I believe some of the most effective of the strategies. Stuff that is so simple, but so hard. So we're going to talk about that today. So you can see here we have our agenda for today. I do have an assignment here that says filling out the self-talk statement sheet. This will be due, it would be kind of like our DICE assignment. This will be due on the 7th of Tuesday of next week. So it gives you some time to really think about it and actually really process this strategy, because I believe it is one of the most effective of the strategies that we can implement in our performers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump into our slides here, and hopefully you were able to see my answers to your questions about the strategies that you asked about. There were some great questions. I loved those answers. I started thinking a little bit more about some of the things like body language. And of course, there's always so much stuff associated with these strategies. Gosh, I can't reiterate enough that the whole body language strategy is something that we really need to be conscious to practice, but it is a great strategy. Hopefully you enjoyed Amy Cuddy's video about positive self-talk, and you read through those questions on the discussion, because I think a lot of the questions, really good questions, and you probably have some of those same questions. So even though I'm not making that an assignment or anything like that, read through the questions and the responses from that Tuesday's assignment. All right, so let's jump in here, and let's go ahead and talk about what I believe is one of the most effective types of strategies that you can implement as a performer, and that is self-talk. So I'm going to start off talking about self-talk and just talk about a little bit of the history of self-talk. You'll often see kind of some parodies on self-talk, and the parodies, I'll put in a link for you for kind of a comical parody that was done in the I believe maybe early 90s, maybe even 80s, by Saturday Night Live. And self-talk also can be known as self-affirmations. And that was a big movement in the 90s. And it wasn't used in the sports setting. It wasn't really used in the performance setting. It was just being used by people in general. And then studies started to come out about these affirmations, talking to yourself good. And studies started to show us that that is a definite way to increase self-efficacy and to increase performance and lower anxieties. So once the science actually showed us that the affirmations were actually a good thing, sports psychology got on board with the self-talk. You see, when we're little, our parents protect us. And I know I've talked about this story before. Our parents try to protect us. So as soon as we become mobile and we start to learn how to walk, our parents are going to talk to us a lot in what we shouldn't do, because they're trying to protect us and keep us safe. So as, little toddler waddles over to the outlet and wants to stick their finger in the hole, because, my little finger as a toddler fits perfectly into that bottom hole of an outlet, parents are like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So what psychologists believe is that we get in a habit of a mind of talking to ourselves in negatives. And so we've talked about this, if you're walking down the hallway and you see your crush and you're like talking to yourself and you're like, don't trip, don't trip, don't look stupid, don't look stupid. We're telling us everything not to do. But like we've said before, the last thing in our mind is look stupid. And of course, we end up looking stupid, or we trip, or, when we take it into athletic performances, we hit the water hazard versus driving it straight down the fairway, because we said it in our mind, don't hit the water hazard. And the last thing in our head is water hazard. So we've got to learn to talk to ourselves in positives, which is going against the grain of everything we've learned so far, right? Because we've learned how to talk to ourselves in negatives. So this is where positive self-talk comes in. And so let's talk about this strategy. It's most effective if you tell your mind what to do rather than what not to do. That we know. Negative statements, we need to start moving away from those. It is very difficult to move away from those. You have to be very conscious of it. It's just as much a conscious choice to do as is the growth mindset, moving from a fixed to a growth mindset. So this is not an easy strategy. It has to become habit. We have two competing voices in our head. We've got the negative critic and the positive coach. And we have to ask ourselves, which one do you choose to listen to? Which one gets to dominate the conversation in your head? And that's very important for you to recognize, because if it's the negative critic, you are doing some very self-defeating things as a performer, especially. Okay. So positive self-talk. While positive thinking doesn't always work, negative thinking, unfortunately, always does work. Okay, so that's what we know. We know that the correlations for positive self-talk, I could go into all the studies about positive self-talk, but I don't want to bore you. We know that it helps with skill, developing fundamental skills. We know that it helps with refining skills. We know that there's good positive correlation with self-efficacy. So basically, I could go on and on with all the different variables I've tested positive self-talk and what it can do. And so therefore, I'll spare you those details and just let you know this is a great strategy. The hardest part is fighting the negative talk. And so within this strategy, whenever you have a negative thought or negative even physiological feeling, okay, that feeling of the butterflies, things like that, and you start getting in your head, oh, I'm so nervous, that's negative, because nervous in a case of performance is a negative, okay? Remember, we want to make things a eustress. We want to be saying to ourselves, I'm looking forward to this. This is my chance to perform. I've worked my butt off to do this. And so what you want to do is we want to push out that negative thought with a positive thought. And the more that we're able to start pushing out those negative thoughts, the more that our mind will become trained not to even think those negative thoughts, and the positive thoughts start becoming the habit. Okay. This is not something that happens quickly. Once again, it's something you have to vow to practice, or else it just doing it on occasion, it doesn't happen. I would say that I still have the negative thoughts, that I still have to remind myself to put the positive thought in there, or what we call a neutral statement. So let me go over those things. And once you can do that, you become a master of your monologue, your inner monologue. And I would say that I'm still not a master of my own inner monologue, but it's definitely 10 times better than what it ever was prior. I wish I had this strategy as an athlete. I didn't have it as an athlete. I'll be the first to admit that. I had a lot of effort. I had a lot of growth mindset, but I did not have the mastering of that monologue. And that could have been the difference. That could have been a major difference in my performance. All right. So there are two types of statements. There are neutral statements and positive statements. Let me explain each. Neutral statements. These are the type of statements that tell you what to do. So let me try a different sport to relate to here. Let's take golf. Okay. Um, Neutral statements are things like keep my head down, loosen my grip, follow through, eye on the ball. These are statements that are task-like statements that are helping you to remember maybe fundamental skills that you need to do in order to perform well. So these are neutral statements. They're not things that are motivating you so much, but that are reminding you of the important aspects of your game. You don't want to overload yourself with neutral statements. You want to have some good standby neutral statements. When we overload ourselves with neutral statements, too many, we start to grow anxious with just, I got to remember to do this. I got to remember to do that. I got to remember to do this. Okay. So you want to have 3 to 4 good, strong neutral statements that are your go-tos. So if a negative thought starts to come in, I can always throw in a neutral statement. Okay. Something like, again, we're at the tee box and there's a water hazard off to our left. I start thinking, oh God, the water hazard, last time I hit the water hazard. Stop, interrupt myself. Just keep your head down. Follow through. That's a good strategy to push out the negative statements. So those are neutral statements. In basketball, I may pick 3 like elbow in, follow through, hips squared, things like that. So those are the things that I want to have in my tool bag that I wear on my hip right there with me to fall back onto. If I start feeling a negative statement, throw a neutral statement in your brain of what you need to do. Okay. Positive statements. These are positive. These are the ones that hype you up. These ones that get you excited. These ones that increase your confidence. Things like, let's say for a runner, we've got this next runner. Okay. If I'm behind another runner and I have a runner in my sight that I could pass, I'm going to say something that's a positive statement. I've got this next runner. I've got this, you are a machine. Like, those are the types of statements you want to have in your toolbox that are positive and uplifting of yourself. If I were in golf, I am a great driver. That is a part of my game I am great at. So there's statements. These are just little 3-word to 7-word statements that don't necessarily have to be a full sentence that you have in your tool bag, that when there's a negative thought starting to go into your head or what not to do, you're going to pull out that positive statement. So I will let you know that's my doctoral thesis. I believe that the most important part of doing this isn't just doing it, but sitting down with your coaches and talking about what should be my 3 main neutral statements and what should be my 3 main or 4 main positive statements. What do you think, coach? Because when a coach sits down with you and do it, now you've got the belief of the coach of what you can do well. And that's going to even further your self-efficacy. So that's actually what my doctoral thesis is going to be on, is use of these types of statements and sitting down with somebody and talking about that. And not just somebody that you work with on a daily basis that coaches you, that helps you to build your game. So this is a great strategy. It has to be practiced. In my sports psychology practice, we talk about these neutral and positive statements that we can do with an athlete, and then I type them up. I laminate them, and this goes on my athletes' backpacks, and they have those neutral statements and positive statements staring at them every single day on their sports bag or on their backpack or wherever they can see it, that these are my monologue. This is my way of combating those negative statements. So what I'm going to have you guys do for your assignment, I still have one more slide to talk to you guys about, but what I'm going to have you guys do for your assignment, and unfortunately Schoology is being a little iffy, so I'm going to show you what the worksheet looks like right now, and hopefully it'll be in there for you tomorrow. These are self-talk statements. So first of all, what I want you to do, the directions say create 3 to 4 self-talk statements that you can fall back on when negative thoughts or anxieties start to enter your mind. 1, I want you to answer, I can use these statements during my blank performance. I want you to focus in on a certain type of a performance. So if your sport is hockey, hockey. Okay. If your performance is theater, theater. I want you putting these statements as something very specific. When you do these statements, you're doing them at practice. You're doing them when you're off stage. You're doing them. You're practicing doing them in your practices, so that in a game, it's just your habit. It's your A game. Okay. So then I have a space for you to write, and you can see I have probably way more lines than you ever need. I'd like 3 to 4. I think when you overload with statements, it becomes more cumbersome. We're going to be less apt to use them because we're like, which ones were they? If we start with 3 to 4, you're going to be more apt to remember them and use them. And then how likely are you to use the self-talk statements and explain? You can give me on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I won't ever do this, 10 being this is definitely I want to try because, okay? So that's the worksheet that you'll have due next Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Now, one of the statements, so let's go back to our presentation. I do want you guys to watch this quick little TED Talk about how we build ourselves up with these statements. This has nothing to do with any kind of sport, but just in life, that once we start talking to ourselves well, we can talk to ourselves very well. And she has a great activity in here. I usually make a lesson out of this. I'm not going to this time, but do it. Make your 10. Make your list of a word list of 10. Stick that up on your mirror. Remind yourself on a daily basis the good that you are, the great things that you bring to either your game or to life, whatever it may be. Okay. So this is a great TED Talk that I would love for you guys to watch. The last thing that I'd like for you guys to watch is this speech by Jerome Chalia. I actually saw this speech just this winter when I was at the AVID conference. And there was recently a study based off of his belief of elevate your eyes. It's a simple neutral statement, but he'll talk to you a little bit about how much that statement can change up your mentality, can influence your self-efficacy, and can make you just that much more powerful. So this is a speech called Elevate Your Eyes. I love this so much, what he has to say in here, that I have started to make it almost a mandatory neutral statement for my athletes, simply because the studies show that it is a great neutral statement. And also because it's simple. It's a simple way just to remind yourself, lift your head up. We've got a lot more game. We got a lot more performance to go. Okay. So I think that's it for today. So with that said, we'll call it lecture done. You do have your self-talk statements to write. If you haven't done our participation activity for this week in creating your album cover, then please do that. I'm loving these. They're awesome. They're so much fun. They make me giggle, which we all need. So if you haven't perused through those, check those out too. And like I said, check out our Tuesday discussion about the strategies that we've talked about prior. All right, guys, have a wonderful Thursday. Hopefully getting a little bit of vitamin D with this great sunny weather. It's supposed to cool down for a little bit and then get warm again. So have a great Thursday, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye. Miss you guys.